as often that we're ready early.
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
10 to beta this week.
Yeah, 2 chairs.
All that one coming soon. So buy some like.
Hi.
There's probably like 100 people watching us too.
Worldwide.
Becca, Stock wants the camera directly on her.
Just like
No, that way.
I'll let you guys see what they're seeing.
Yeah, see what they're saying. It's my big hit. So,
Yeah, I was gonna say PG, keep PG. You see the poster?
Yeah, that's the one.
Sleeping looking like that.
Yeah, let me know if you need help with the furniture or anything.
There it is.
Oh, I see Sock.
Oh, great, I'm right.
Oh,
I'm in the wrong spot, that's why the seat was open.
Hi, everybody. Oh my goodness.
What?
I have all these people keep coming in. I think you guys know more about this stuff than I do already, so I don't know. All right
Want
then.
to get started?
Yeah, we close.
it's 11.
10:58.
10:58.
Time to go. All right, yeah, let's start the broadcast. No more cussing at it.
It was already started.
I was gonna say it's been going for a while.
All right.
Just a couple of minutes.
PG.
Okay. Well, there we're going to talk about CMAs and not so much doing them, but getting prepared to do them. You know, what resources can you use? Where can you find information? That kind of thing. And we're going to talk about the process of a CMA and what it's designed for, what it's designed to do. The main thing about a CMA is that we have to develop a price that we can make sense of for different entities, because we have the seller wants to get the most, they want all they can get out of the property. Then we have the buyer. We want to make sure that the buyer can see value in our listing and our price that we put on that listing. And then we have an appraiser. So even if the seller listed at something and the buyer thinks that's wonderful, we still have to satisfy an appraiser. So the idea of doing a market analysis is to cover all three of those things, to see that we can show value to every person that's involved in the transaction, from the listing when we talk with the seller, to the buyer when they're looking and seeing the property and doing comparables on it to see how it works, and then finally to the appraiser, so that the lender knows that the value that they're putting in the property and the loan and debt that they're incurring is justified. So that's the essence of this. So how many have spent time looking over an appraisal? Carrie, you have. So, looking at an appraisal, it gives you a real good idea, and if you haven't, find an appraisal. If it's one that you can get from a buyer that you've worked with, or if it's a seller that had one done, anything like that, get an appraisal and look at it and see how it flows and how the comparables work and what they do. The idea of putting together pricing is that you find properties that are comparable, and by comparable I mean within a certain distance. The appraisers tend to find that 1 mile is a real comfort level for them. If they have to go out a little bit further, get out to the 1.5 mile, they can do that in some situations when they can't find stuff close enough. But you want to stay relatively close to that basic area, go out in a radius, of at least 1 mile, and then look for like-kind properties. So you want properties that that are similar, not only in style, so it's best to compare a 2-story to a 2-story, a ranch to a ranch, that kind of thing. So you want that, but you also want it to be relatively close in size, so that you don't have huge adjustments going from one listing to another. And while I'm saying that and thinking about that, don't make the mistake of assigning a square foot value to a property based on what your matrix says it's selling. There's that much per square foot. So like right now, it's not uncommon to see $150 a square foot for something, but you can't make an adjustment at $150 a square foot because the land is included in that. The concrete, of upgrading the land to get it, put on, all of those things are included in that value. And so you have to make sure that you're not assigning, most appraisers, I got some sheets to show you, are going to be on up and above ground square footage adjustment is going to be somewhere between like 35 and 50 on some of the nicer properties. So make sure you don't make that mistake of like, it's 100 feet more, so, at 160 a foot, it's like, yeah, no, it's not going to work, okay? The valuation isn't going to be gained because of that, all right? So you've got location, you've got style, size, and then you look at amenities and condition. Those are generally speaking, are the things that you want to try to make the same. And by make the same, I mean when you're looking at a comparable listing, whether it be an active, a pending, or a sold, or maybe even an expired if you're trying to make a point, when you look at those, when you're making adjustments, you want to adjust the comparables towards the listing, towards the house you're doing that CMA on. So if something is better on the comparable, you subtract to the house you're trying to list. If something is better on the subject house, then you add value to make that adjustment. So you always adjust your comparison properties towards the property that you're appraising or doing the CMA on, or if you're doing a fairly detailed one for a buyer. The idea of being able to do this and do this somewhat quickly is good because the buyers expect this sometimes. When they're looking at a property, get out of the way, she's coming through. Oh, you're gonna stay there, okay. So when buyers are looking at properties, you want to be able to do quick comparables for them to justify the price of the property, or maybe not justify the price of the property. That's a service that we need to offer to our buyers when they're looking at something, so that we're offering them same level of service to a buyer as we do a seller. And it should be basically the same comparable package for a buyer as it is a seller. And you can't use one set to get the price for a seller, and then use a different set for the buyer that says, oh, we shouldn't pay that much for it because look at the comparables. They should be the same, given the same, snapshot in time. So with that being said, there are some things that you can do. There's the site. Will you pull up the RPR site? Okay, and in the is that our search? Yeah, in the search, put that address, that 4247 Boyd, Des Moines, Iowa 50317. And did anybody else use RPR? It is the best site. It is the closest valuation just out of the box. So if you want to do something really quick, You have an investor that's looking at a property, you want to see something about it. So this is going to be skewed because I've already sold this property. But you can see that it just pops right up. It uses the pictures, the latest pictures there are. These are the ones we had for the listing. But it shows your RVM up there at like 183. And it was last updated at the first of the year. So that sale price was factored into that. And I don't know whether they got value in it or not based on the comparables around it. There was never any concern that this property wouldn't appraise. We had to just have it at a value that it would sell at. Because it's on the very edge of Des Moines and it's newer. So it's going to work with the newer construction out in there in Brook Run and those areas that are out there. It gets the feed off of that a little bit. So we were never concerned about it not appraising. This one was more concerned about getting a price that somebody would buy it for that money. Okay, so if you scroll down a little bit, go ahead and you'll see the description, that kind of stuff. You get homeowner facts, you'll see what they're showing. Here's the public facts, of course. Now they have listing facts because we had the property listed. But if you scroll down a little bit further, you'll see it shows the values and where they've been. You'll see some of the features. It goes all the way down. You'll even see down in here where you have the well, the legal, but you also have like the mortgage records. So that's nice to know when you're getting ready to list a house. You get some idea of is there a first and a second, that kind of thing. So you can really find out a lot about the property as you're going to talk to somebody. And at least you can say, do you still have that second on there, or have you paid that off recently? So it makes you more knowledgeable. And the one thing as agents that we can be is the most knowledgeable possible. We present ourselves much better if we have a solid knowledge of the area of their property, of what houses have sold for, what houses are, because I mean, how many of you went to some place and they're like, well, what about the one down the street? They always know about their neighborhood, and they're going to ask you whether it just sold, and as far as they're concerned, it just sold a year ago. That's just sold for a neighbor, and they're going to want to know how much that sold for. They're going to assume that it sold for what it was listed for, because that's what people think. So you need to have that information so you can talk to them, and also have that house so you have some understanding of how that goes in a comparison. Because they'll be like, well, the house is just like mine. And you find out that it's 300 square foot larger. It's got a finished basement. They don't. It's got a bathroom in the basement. They don't. The garage is 24 by 26, and theirs is 20 by 22. So those things factor in, and you have to have that understanding. If you can show them that knowledge base, you're going to be much better off at obtaining that listing, because they know you're an expert in the area, you're knowledgeable about their home and the properties around that home. That's what people want. Okay, that's what they want. You can sell them on your marketing and all those kinds of things after the fact, but the first thing they have to know is that you understand what's going on. Okay, you're a knowledgeable individual. So with that, okay, so we got that. That's one thing to go, and you can look in. You can actually, if you know something about a property, you can go in on a side-by-side and make adjustments to that. So if you know something that the public records don't show, maybe there's some finished basement, maybe there's this, maybe there's that. There's some things that you can add in and adjust their estimate based on that kind of knowledge. So you can use RPR. It's fairly quick. It's got great printouts and things. If you want to print something out, it talks about the area and schools and valuations, medians, and just tons of information that's available. And this has proven to be, over the last 2 years anyway, this has proven to be the most accurate valuation model that's out there. I don't, Zillow just doesn't come anywhere near as close as that. Now Zillow will sometimes, if you're selling ranch, 2-car detached in Sheridan Park on the east side, Zillow's probably gonna get close because there's tons of them there, you know? And that'll happen in neighborhoods where you have the same types of houses in an area, same age, same stuff. You'll find that valuation gets closer on all of your models. It's kind of similar to, you do a valuation model on a large condo or townhome association, you're probably gonna get relatively close because they're all pretty close to the same thing. You know, you gotta look at end unit and square footage on those. So that's it. Okay. The other resource, if you'll click back to the assessor, the other resource is always, always, always go to the assessor page. Polk County is awesome. You know, sometimes we get outside of Polk County and we're so spoiled that it's really hard to do outside of there. If you have to go to Dallas or Madison or Jasper or Warren, you know, they don't have near the setup that we have here, but still make that effort to gain some information there. That's because you want to know about their taxes anyway. You want to understand what's there, what the city says. You know, we're still handcuffed with square footage values and stuff from the city. The assessor site is what we have to work with, and if it's different than that, we have to put it down below in our remarks that says, you know, seller says that there's an extra 300 square foot somewhere that the assessor doesn't show. You can't, and I've done this twice where I knew I was going to list a house and the valuation on the assessor was low because it was so far off that you actually can go then down to the assessor as a homeowner and say, I have this, this, and this that you're not showing, and they will revalue your property and put it out there. Because so many people look at this and go, well, heck, it says it's, you know, it's only worth 142, and you've got it listed for 175, you know.
How long does that take in for it to start before it kicks in? Taxes.
It seems that, well, yeah, the tax thing, that'll, you know, the next tax assessment will be reflected on that. And taxes, you know, they're assessed on odd years, and then pretty much sustained on even years, but assessed on odd years. And it's, so all of you understand, it's for that year, January, for that year, it's assessed in January. It starts accruing in July 1st of that year through to June 30th of the next year. And then that September is the first time you pay based on that tax. So you're always, on valuations, you were always, you know, a year, 18 months behind on your valuations on the assessor site anyway. So you can do that. That was just an aside. If somebody wants to have their valuation look much better, for RVMs and that kind of stuff, you can do that. So we got this house. It had been listed twice before. It was listed somewhere, I think it was 185 the time before, something like that. It had been on, it expired, nothing happened, they couldn't get anything done. And so they called and wanted to see what we could do. So we took a look at all of this and toured their home. There were two things that were hugely wrong with the property. One, it just was not showing well. And it wasn't because she wasn't clean, but she had everything. I was like, on the side of the refrigerator were like 42 pictures, and the drawing that her kid did, you know, a year and a half before that was posted on there, and the schedule for next week was posted on there, and the grocery list, everything was just, the refrigerator was just covered with all this stuff. And so they had all this stuff kind of around, very clean. It actually looked nice. It probably lived very nice, but it needed some help. And so we had a interior designer come in, go through the whole thing, gave them a list of everything that needed to be done to present the house better. So that was the first thing we did, and I think that was huge in this property, that it actually needed that. So we took this property, and I want to pass some of these out because I don't want you to be able to see these. These are older because I haven't been able to find a new one for a while. This is from my old company, and that was 10 years ago or more. Yeah, exactly. The problem is that it's a good piece, and it gives you a little bit of stuff on the front, just some ideas, talk on the front. And on the very back of the page, it gives you adjustments. Just, what can you do with the property to adjust? Now, be aware that this one, the valuation adjustments are from 2000. And so you're going to find that some of them are going to be a little bit low, some of your square footage adjustments, stuff like that, which you might want to. And so that's going to be a little bit low. But it hasn't changed dramatically. It really hasn't at this point. But those adjustments are what you use, valuations that you use as you look through and find that, this one doesn't have a 2-car, it has a 1-car. And detached or attached, and 2 to 3 for cars. And we're finding a lot of that. The one thing I have noticed is that 2-car garages on resales have actually started to not hurt the value as much as they used to. That surprised me. But the resale market is so active that people are willing to live with the 2-car, where you go back a year and a half, 2 years ago, and you just virtually had to make a huge hit going from a 3-car to a 2-car in adjustment. But you don't have to do as much now just because resale values have gone up so much. And people are saying, we can get by with the 2. If we can get the square footage and the location we want, they're good with that. So you have to have this basic knowledge of the market that you're working in to be able to apply the valuations that are put out here. And so some of the things you'll see in there, and I have another one here too, is like when you go from 1 bath to 2 baths in a property, that's huge. That's monstrous, okay? That's a high valuation change when you get that 2nd bathroom. If the 2nd bathroom is off the master, that's even more of a change in valuation. Or if it's on the main level, that's good. If it's in the basement, not so much, but there is a 2nd bath, and that's huge.
So you don't necessarily just give like bathroom $1,500 if it's like a bathroom that's en suite, then you'll go up like a $2,500.
Absolutely,
Okay.
yeah, because it changes the way the home lives. So baths on masters are huge. If that's the 2nd bath, that's a big deal. That's a big deal, okay? But if you have a house and you go from the 2 baths to 3, did it really add a lot? Now if you have, and you got to think about these things, if you've got a bath in the main level, the main hallway of the bedroom set, whether it's a ranch or a 2-story, and you have a bath off the master, and then you added a bath in the finished lower level, that bath's going to be worth more money, because that adds some great usability to the property. So you can assign more value to that. So you have to think through your adjustments each time. You'll see houses that they'll have let's say 160 square foot difference, and you walk into the house, and the only difference in the house is that it has a dining room off the kitchen. How many people want a dining room now? Okay, the bedrooms are going to be the same size. Bathrooms, the layout, everything else is going to be exactly the same, but it's got a dining room. Is there going to be real value in that square footage versus the exact same plan, only they bumped up the top level, and they bumped it out 2 foot, and so 2 of the bedrooms are 2 foot bigger all the way across the back of the house. So I think that's probably more valuable than the dining room in today's world. It's like having a formal living room.
So would you say you do more things like that, like an overall feel when you're getting a value versus the exact numbers? Because like I know when I started, I had a sheet very similar to this that was given to me, and it was, I'm doing the exact math, I'm breaking it down, I'm showing it to them,
Yeah.
I'm doing all that, but then as I've done more and more, I'm just looking at RPR and the MLS, and it's more a feel.
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll give them a $30,000 range, and once I'm
Yeah,
completely through the house, I'm like, no, this is where we need.
yeah. See, when you're doing a market for the seller, you have to think like a buyer. Okay? That's, your head has to go in as a buyer. What is going to make me feel good? What's going to be usable square footage? And then you have to think like a buyer. It's like, are you a buyer at 150? Or are you a buyer at 350? Because those are totally different mindsets. You know, people that are looking at $150,000 houses are looking for good quality living. You know, a good place to live. Neighborhood, awesome. You know, but when you're at 350, you start looking at the quality of the cabinets. Are they soft closed drawers? Is it got granite countertop? Is the basement a walkout? You know, is it on a cul-de-sac? What's the siding like? You know, is it hardy plank or is it the new, what's it, DuPont or whatever? What's that chain that? LP. So, you know, those things are gonna matter in that higher range. They look at more of that stuff. And so those things become more valuable as you raise. Because if you're looking at a 350 house, it better have 3 bathrooms. You know, it better. And if it has a finished lower level, there better be a bathroom down there. Otherwise, it's like, you know, shoot, every time you're down there, you gotta come upstairs. It doesn't make any sense. So you've got to assign value with some kind of sense of this would make the buyer pay more because of this, or would add value to the appraisal because of this. So those things are really important. This is another sheet. This, I have to give credit to my buddy Les Solgroup on this one. I took one of his classes a while back. It's a little different on the back, a little bit more stuff. But also he talks about, because he's such a stat guy, as you all well know, he's a crazy nut stat guy. And so he likes to figure out all these stats and where they go and what they're like. And sometimes we disagree on what they mean, but that's, you know, that's how that gets set
So
up.
what would you say is the normal adjustment for additional square feet now? This is in 2010, this is a little bit higher.
Yeah.
And then this is from 2000. What would you say that would be?
I would be surprised if you found anything where you felt the need to adjust it at more than $50 a square foot. I'd be surprised at that. Maybe a high-end ranch that has extreme quality, you know, throughout. Everything about it is, you know, heated tile floors and awesome carpets and, you know, all that kind of stuff. Maybe you could bump that a touch, you know, because you're looking at a home that's built at, I don't know what, $230 a square foot for a high-end ranch.
If you count the basement and everything, yeah.
So, you know, so maybe you get that to maybe adjust at 60 there. If you see value in the square footage, you know, so that's the other thing about thinking through that is the additional square footage adding value to the property because it's added in the right spots. It's here and there. And it's tough when you've got comparables because you might not be able to find a lot about that. So when you're doing your back in the matrix system, see what you find there. You have to look back into the assessor side on those comparables to see what you see there. You know, find out as much as you can. You know, look through the pictures, you know, that kind of stuff. If you're being serious about doing a really solid CMA, you know, it's fine. Now, that doesn't mean you can't go to somebody's house and take a look around and have a pretty good idea of what value is going to be in the property. And you've sold 15 of them like that over the last 3 years, and you know, generally in that same area because you specialize in Johnston, and you know that, you know, 2 stories in Johnston in this neighborhood tend to sell for this much. That doesn't mean you can't sit there and go, you know what, from my experience, which they love to hear, my experience in this area selling properties, I'm thinking we're going to be somewhere around here. You know, that's okay. That adds value because you're there. And if you've done enough research ahead of time, that you can actually do a one-stop listing. So you go to that house, you see the house, right there, you fill paperwork out and do it. That's a talent, that's a good skill, because it's hard to do one-stops. It's really hard to do one-stops, because you have to know that area really well. Questions so far? Any others that are looming on the horizon here? Okay. When you go here, this is fun. If you go down to the comparable sales search, it's right in the blue, just under links. See at the top there? Yeah, right there. If you click on there, and this will take you back to 13, and you can change that if you want. I don't worry about it. And it goes to a radius of 1 mile. Depending on the property and the uniqueness, you might change that to 2. But if you go there, just scroll down and go down to perform search. Okay. Now you do that, and then what you do is you go up here to the top at sale date, and you click on those arrows. I'm pointing at the screen here. I'm sorry, at the top of sale date, and click that to put it into. Okay, now click it one more time. There. Now you get all the recent sales. Okay. So you have all the recent sales for a mile radius of that property that fits that property. You know, that's 2-story between a certain square footage, that kind of stuff. It's a great start. If you're going to go see a property, this is a great thing to do.
Did you guys all know that was there? Did everyone knew that was there? Okay.
Probably, yeah. No, but it's an easy, quick, great way if somebody says, hey, can you come out and look at the house? We're thinking about selling it. You know, you can pop on there, print that out, boom, you're in, and you can see the latest, everything that's sold in the 1 mile that fits theirs now. If you want to expand that, you know, you have to make some changes in it where you're going to say not only 2 stories and 2-story plus, you can do ranches and all the others, and you can check all those and expand that. I suggest sometimes doing that if you're unfamiliar in an area, that you start way wide. You start with an open circle, you start with open concept of the property style and size and all, you just leave it and just do a search, a general search in that area. And start looking at pricing, because there's also parameters that appraisers look at as like, are we outside of the envelope of that area? So, you know, if every sale for the last 2 years has been $250 and less, and the appraiser is being asked to take a house, could be worth it, but take a house and put it at $300, that's asking a lot, because that area just doesn't support that. And if you're doing that for a buyer, you're like, I don't know, I mean, it's the nicest house in the area, but you're also paying for that nicest house in the area. And what I tell buyers, my fear is that I'll be in business long enough that you call me back and want to sell it. And then I have to be able to do that. So always when you're looking for buyers, for that mindset, you always want to think, okay, for that buyer, what happens if they call me back in 3 to 5 years and I need to sell that property? That'll change your mindset of how you talk to them and what you work with. Because all of a sudden now you got it's like, oh, now I'm looking like a seller at that property for buyers. Okay, so that'll help you. So with those things, it gives you a bit of an idea. You can pop them up on the left and see what they look like, those kind of things. If you find something in there, and see the thing about this is that every property, you see this, nothing sold that was anywhere near the neighborhood that my listing was in, because mine was in Des Moines proper, and all the rest of these were in Des Moines, but like Brook Run and that kind of stuff. So these things had to be factored when you looked at like a 250, and my house had that kind of square footage. You know, I'm like, I don't know about that. You know, so Jesse, did you have something? No. Okay. So if you'll go back to Matrix now. and go into my matrix, down to my CMAs, and then click on that 4247 void up there. And go to Edit CMA. And this shows you all the stuff. This is the CMA that Matrix has. Do you still use the Matrix one at all? Or
I started using RPR.
Yeah.
And then when I print it out and it's like 85 pages, I just run the staples and get it bound. I
Yeah.
talk about 3 of the pages, but it looks like I did
Oh, it's
100 pages
amazing.
worth of research.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you had all this
Yeah.
information.
Yeah.
I'm like, yep, I totally typed your address into this.
That was fair for you. That's right.
That's a great
No,
Yeah.
no, it's exactly. But
I've had
it does have so much
overwhelming
research.
response with it.
Yeah.
People just, they look at it and their eyes widen, like, I
Yeah.
can't believe he's providing me all this data.
Yeah.
Heat maps and all.
Oh,
I don't-
everything, yeah.
The problem is some of it, I don't even know where it's
Yeah, and this relates how, right? You know.
Like, so what is this here? I'm like, oh, we'll go to the next page.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna show you this over here. So, yeah, exactly. But you see this, and it goes through, and if you go click over, there's a bunch of pages, and you can, put them in or not put them in. But go to comparables, and this shows you the comparable items. Because that property was on the edge of an area, and I was going to compare to all these properties outside of that area, I wanted to get a large view comparison. So I didn't, and that's the nice thing about a matrix, is that you don't have to do all that stuff. You can just do this, and you see these, see now a couple of them expired, but you see these are the ones that I used at that time. This is that what's called a live form, so when you go back, the changes are made in it because it's live. So you see these that are so many solds in there, and I just wanted to get a real good feel for it. So I'm like, I'm going to use a lot of them. I'm going to expand that, to really settle in on this. And then when you go to click over to the next one, adjustments, I'm sorry. When you click over, this is what we're talking about and what you use those numbers for, and that's what's on that double fold sheet that I gave you, is that you look at these and you start looking. See, I made adjustments. It was like from, square footage reasonably close, but 3 to a 4 bedroom, and I made an adjustment. And then I made, like down here, we had a finished basement, or not a finished basement, and the other one did, so I had to bring the value down there. So you make those adjustments and then adjust the price, and then you go on to the next one.
So for that 800 square feet, you only did $10,000, huh?
That's basement.
I know, but I'm saying just.
Basement square footage is somewhere between $10 and, on the very best ones that are walkouts, you might get 25. Basement square footage does not add a whole lot of value. Whole lot of livability. If it's a ranch walkout and it's integrated well, you might sneak it up a touch, but not much. Not much.
What about a bar? If there's a bar down there, a theater, do you put value on that?
Because of the entertainment value and stuff, you might, pump it just a little bit. Again, what's it like down there? Does it have the bathroom, that's down in the lower level? Are bedrooms down there? If you are, then, you add them and make the bedroom adjustment in a different spot. So you just can't, can't adjust.
So for the bedrooms, like, okay, say there's a 3 and a 4, and that 4th bedroom is in the basement, but it has an egress.
Absolutely.
You would still count that different than you would like a 4th bedroom upstairs?
No, I count that the same.
Okay.
For valuation added, not the square footage change.
Okay.
But valuation added going from a 3 to a 4.
And you counted that as $1,000?
Yeah, I did, on this one, I did 1,000.
Okay.
And you might make a case that, a 2 to 3 bedroom is certainly going to be worth more. Going from a 2 bedroom to a 3, and a 3 to a 4, and then of course from there it starts losing value as it goes. Now it may be valuable to a buyer, but there's 2 things that we look at: salability, which is a great thing to have, but isn't worth a lot of money. Salability is not worth a lot of money, but it's worth a lot of time. Because salability shrinks the time that a property is on the market. When it's more saleable, it's going to be on the market less. So that's one of the reasons that I think that staging the property, taking good pictures, those kinds of things, all add to that saleability factor. And that takes your time on the market down because saleability is up.
And then, sorry.
No, you're fine, I love it.
And then for the adjustment for square feet, so you don't adjust it within like 100 square feet, and then like above 100, then you start adjusting?
Yeah,
Plus or minus
it
what
depends.
you-
I had so many here, I don't know.
Like
Yeah,
that
it was only a few, so I didn't make a big adjustment here. There was a little bit. Yeah, and then we went from cement board and vinyl siding. I had value for cement board. There was 10,000 adjustment, between these two. So yeah, it just kind of depends. And again, it's not, I didn't take this, like you were saying, and like, well, that's worth 22.
Right.
I didn't do that. You kind of have a feel for it of, the valuation difference. And this just kind of keeps you in check, I think, more than anything, is that you don't start adding values that are just not justifiable at all. Okay?
There's a couple of the things to consider too, is we've dinged a home for location. When I say dinged, we've lessened value.
Scroll down a little bit.
Like a busy street's 5,000 or 7,000. A busy corner street's even to be worth more. So there's a lot of factors when it comes to the, location.
Yeah,
There's really no sell for it. You got to create your own to test or something. Yeah.
yeah, there's not a cell. I thought some of these I did a.
RPR has a field where you, location-wise, you can just pick a bar and scroll one way.
Oh, yeah.
Like, hey, this is a great location. Hey, this is a terrible location, and it starts to adjust.
I usually do it on this when I do it in the zoning module because there's not much zoning adjustment, in our world.
And
So I do it in the zoning and then I adjust it accordingly.
and then when do you start adjusting for lot size?
When it starts to really make a difference, I mean, when you go from, when you get
on
under,
like 0.8 and 0.17 and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
if you have one that was like 0.3 or, a half an acre,
yes.
you would start adjusting.
You absolutely, and I look at it, I always look at it from the square footage because it works better in my head.
Okay.
But I put the bar, because I'm an east sider and I come from the 50 by 150 world. I mean, that was lots on the east side, 50 by 150. So I come from that world and I know how that lives. So 50 by 150 is 7,500 square foot. If it's less than that, it's like, ooh, that's tight. If it's less than 7,500, that's starting to snug up pretty good, And then the other side of that is when you get over into past 10,000 square foot, I start looking at that. So you know what? And then you got to start factoring in, okay, it's 10,000 square foot, but it's a corner lot. How much livability does that side yard have? Okay, so that's why corner lots tend to be bigger, but they don't live better because nobody uses the side yard. They just have to shovel the sidewalk all the way around. So if it's a 70 by 190, we're talking a nice lot. That's going to make a valuation difference, and I need to adjust accordingly to give some livability to that. Okay.
Can a lot ever be too big
Um,
to where it lessens value?
I had that happen.
I would think there'd be, some scenarios. I think it's how the lot sits and how it could live. Josh had a house that was on a cul-de-sac, which was great because it went out, like that. And it was a big, huge backyard. But then it was in the corner of the golf course. So it went out and then it turned and went to a point. That last 8,000 square foot of lot is just more to mow because it absolutely did not add a thing to that. It didn't add view. I mean, the golf course was there anyway. So that additional square footage, I think you kind of capped at a certain point because it didn't add livability beyond that. Okay. The only time it was great when the kids wanted to play a big football game or baseball game. So that was probably it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So those are the things that come on, and if you'll scroll, or not scroll, but click on over now to pricing. And so when I got to this point, we ran down here through the numbers, and it gives you your comparables and your averages and all those kinds of things, worked through. When we got down here, I told them that the price range was going to be 175 to 180 based on everything that I saw. Okay. We listed the house. They were tired of being on the market. They were absolutely tired of it. They chose to list it at 175,000. It sold at 175,000. And I think we had 2,500 of closing costs in it. So all of that worked through the effort that was put in at the beginning. It all worked through the end. And of course, like I said, there was no concern of where this property was going to be as far as an appraisal was concerned. Just knowledge base wise, and most of you probably know this, but appraisers have to do a thing called bracketing. So when you're looking in an area and you see a property, and it's like, man, this is nice. Maybe it's almost too nice for the area. What you have to find, is there a comparable that will be at or above that value that can be adjusted to that property? Because that appraiser has to have something that's more that he can adjust down, and something that's lower that they adjust up to, and then they try to find that perfect one that matches well. But they have to be able to bracket a property, and if you don't have that valuation that's available for you, because every time I used to list a ton of properties over by Union Park, and I always listed the ones that were like super nice, because I knew all those people from living over there, But I had to go see, okay, what's sold lately? Because if a property, one of those nice properties hadn't sold in the last 6-8 months, we could be in trouble, because I can sell it. I can sell them all day long. People wanted them. But unless they're paying cash, I had to figure out a way to get the valuation up. And when you're doing something like that, that's when you want to make sure that you have your comparables, that you have them in hand and ready. And when that appraiser calls, you'd be like, you bet, I'll be over. Hand them, that's it. Just in case you need them, that's it. You're not trying to influence, you're trying to help. And they appreciate help. Now, if you want to talk to them like we did in the old days, they do an FHA, and you'd open the door to the bedroom and you'd stand back where the wall was messed up and the carpet was screwed up. You'd stand there so that the appraiser didn't notice that. Hey, you guys got to understand, I come from the days when everybody represented the seller. A long time ago, okay? We all represented the seller.
What's bracketing, and how the heck do you know about it? What's bracketing?
Bracketing is what the appraiser has to do. They have to.
What is it? One worse, one better?
It's one that's higher value adjusted down, one that's a lower value that's adjusted up, and hopefully one that's fairly similar.
Gotcha.
That's the best world for an appraiser, is to find those three things.
How often do you take appraisers to lunch?
Be recorded, remember.
Never mind.
No, I was trying to think.
Coffee.
I was trying to think the last time I did. It's been a long time.
But you used to do it, is the point. And so
I did to
why-
get knowledge, sure.
So
Always did to gain knowledge, and you have appraisers, and there's appraiser classes that you can go to and learn about that. It makes us better if we understand their world, because I guarantee you, they work hard at trying to understand our world. And the one thing that you want to make sure of, and this is just a little hint, anytime an appraiser calls you, you answer the phone and you make sure you get them what they need. They will remember you, always, because they call people all the time, and they're like,
Would this sell floor to have finished in the basement or the concessions?
yeah,
What if I don't have it with me? I'll tell them, hey, I want to get you the right info,
Yeah.
so I'll call you back.
Call you back.
When I get to my desk. I like
call them back,
appreciate
and,
that so much. So.
leave, typically you get the voicemail and you call them back because they're out, and you leave the information on there for them. They remember that. And when they go out and they see, oh,
you never know when you.
this agent is on there, and so if it's like, they can always lean, they can lean a little bit one way, lean a little bit the other.
If you help down they get one where they've had like, they're not coming in where you are for your listing, they'll call
Absolutely.
before they submit it and say, hey, I'm not finding,
Yeah.
what
Yeah, what'd you use?
you use.
So they should get the benefit of the doubt.
Right, and then you explain it, where
And
they'll
like,
do it.
you know,
it's
and when you
done.
tell them, you know what, I just threw a dart in and that's
I've
where it
never
came.
said that.
Because they'll be like, oh, okay, so you didn't do
Like,
anything.
it's sold in an hour, it has to be, the value has to be there.
No, but that's actually true.
I mean, it should be.
If an appraiser calls you and says, I'm not gaining valuation, they say, well, listen, I had 7 showings in 2 days and 2 offers.
Right.
They're like, ooh, okay. And they'll actually work harder to try to find, because it's got value. I mean, otherwise you don't get that kind of information. Don't lie to them, they'll find out. It's a small world we live in around here, okay?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you always give that small of a range? A price range? Do you always, like,
When I've been in
$500
a house and I've seen it and I'm really fine tuning it, yeah, I typically stay pretty.
Yeah, I guess I
pretty
go
close.
bigger. I'll usually go like the top range would be like $5,000 over where I want them to list, but then leave a range significantly lower just in case, because if I tell them, hey, it should sell in this $5,000 range, and we've done 15,000 in price reductions, and it's still not, they're like, well, you said.
Well, that's a good idea, Jason. So you go
So
5,000 high, the most.
I'm like, but I could see it going as low as this, you know, if people
Well,
are feeling
and
it.
if you can see that, if you're like, hey, I'm working the market, because you talk to people about their envelope, okay? There's an envelope. And by envelope, I mean there's a low price that it'll sell at, like boom.
Right.
Okay? And there's a price that the buyer has to come by. That buyer that wants that house at that location for that kind of money, because grandma lives in the house right behind it, and it'd be so cool to be able to just walk across the yard and see her. They'll pay an extra $5,000 because that's perfect. That's the ultimate location thing, all right? But there's only one buyer that has a grandma that lives right behind that house. So yes, there is a wide envelope range. These people, in all fairness, these people had already been on the market at 185 or 190,
Right.
I forget which one it was. So I knew that there was a high end that it was like, it ain't happening.
Right.
So I have one more question,
Yeah.
sorry.
No, don't be sorry, I love questions.
All right, so the way you have it comped out, based on what you have in Matrix, it says that the median is 162. You said it was supposed to list between 175 and 180.
Yes.
So with the adjustments, you could have probably stretched the adjustments a little bit more to really bring the value up, it looks like. Because the adjusted comp price is like what you adjusted, it's low. So do you do that on purpose? So you kind of have like
No, I don't do it on purpose. I make the adjustments and that's what it is.
Okay.
And I think through it.
Okay.
And the only thing here is that, depending on what you're going to use in there, is whether, say, the lows, the medians, the average, those are the same things on statistics.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
kind of what, maybe I'm doing it wrong, but that's why I'm here. But I've been using more like a statistic thing where it's not necessarily, okay, should be the average for an extra bath, this should be the average for the square feet. And I'll adjust it even if it's in 10 square feet, it'll just be a really small adjustment.
Mhm.
And maybe it's because I come from like an underwriting background where
Yeah.
it's because that's what you see appraisers do.
Right.
So that's how I price my property as opposed to saying 10 grand. Like basements, I'll say 20 square foot, adjust it out, and if this one has 100 more, then I'll adjust it, or 5 more, I'll adjust it, $100.
Yeah.
But I'll still have an adjustment there. So I'm just trying to, that's why I have so many questions, because it's just a different mindset.
No, I totally understand, and that is, and some of that is an experience level of just doing so many, so I don't worry about that too much. But the other thing with this one is that the valuation came in through the adjustments and those kinds of things, square footage and that kind of stuff. I couldn't add the value that on the second floor they had this amazing second family room that walked out to a big deck that walked downstairs to the backyard that was totally fenced. And I couldn't make that adjustment because it just doesn't work. So I knew there was some additional saleability and additional value built into that because it was the coolest room ever. And it could have been converted to a big giant master. It wouldn't have a bath, but it could have been, a huge master if you wanted it to be. So there was some of my mind that said, what, yeah, it's worth a little bit more than the comparable show, just because of those little ancillary things that were around it. And so that probably is why I went from there, and took it up, to the 175 to 180. Okay. So yeah, we do a lot of things by gut. And the more time you're there showing buyers out there in areas, you become a really smart person on those areas. You learn more with buyers showing them properties than you do with sellers listing properties. I'd rather list, but you learn a ton from taking buyers out. And so I'd suggest that when you take buyers out, that you take notes, or you notice things, or you write something down. You have your own set of papers and that kind of stuff. As you grow in the business, it'll become second nature. But if you're newer at that part of the business, I'd suggest that you use the showings that you're doing with buyers to make you a much better listing agent. I think there's huge value in that, because you're showing a specific area, a specific thing, a specific price range. In fact, I tell my buyers when I'm working with them, they will be more knowledgeable in that area than I will be, because they are focused. They have maybe
They know they want to live there.
maybe a $50,000 price range, if that. They have a style and area, those kinds of things. My goal to showing people houses is to get them to the point that when they walk into one that fits and is a good value, they know. I don't have to tell them. They know. Boom, there it is.
So they see
There
the
it is.
competition.
Found it.
Yeah.
Found it. It's right here. That's knowledgeable buyers, and that's your job as a buyer's agent. Not to tell them, this is when you need to buy. This is perfect for you. You need them knowledgeable enough that they tell you that. If they tell you that, you've done your job. You've done it good. Okay.
Sometimes a buyer will ask you, what do you think this house is worth? I don't know, what do you think? Is always a good comeback, because what you think and what they think is, and I don't know if we've all done this, but I've done it, put my foot in my mouth. I think it's a great house. I wouldn't pay $2 for this house. I'm like, I think it's great, except for the fact that you don't like it. Let's go. And so just think about, just because I like it, doesn't mean somebody else is gonna like it.
Yeah.
And so
And you can always qualify your answers, So I wouldn't live here, but I can give you some valuation.
right. What's it worth to you?
Or-
And then if you like the house and if it's perfect for you, let's go back and do what Lance is doing here, just to make sure you're not overpaying.
Yeah.
Or make sure
And always, you'll find that half of your buyers won't take you up on it, but always offer to do valuations. Always. Say, you know what, I can go back to the office and I can run some numbers on this thing. It won't take me long, and I don't mind. And I've said that to people all along for years. I've said that. Get I don't mind in your vocabulary when you're talking to buyers and sellers. Get I don't mind.
You said some people won't take you up on
Yeah.
Well, because his trust level is so
that?
high.
All
Yeah.
of them people take me up on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of work.
Yeah,
But,
it
I mean, I
is.
don't mind.
But good job.
Nice.
But you can get there with, you can do it, do it quick, or do the assessor one,
Right.
or do the RPR one, and, say, here's what I'm seeing, I did some quick things, so. Did you have, we're good? Any other questions? Anything that I didn't cover, I feel like we went really quick. No, we didn't. I just talked a lot. So, go out there and just try this. And, if you're not in the process of doing something now, do a market on your own home. Ask another agent, hey, you got one? I want to do one and compare it with you to somebody that you know and trust. They're a good listing agent. They do valuations well, that kind of stuff. Say, what are you working on? Just give me an address.
Me?
No, somebody like you. The other agents could ask. He told everything, he lost. No, I'm not asking, I'm just saying as a question to another agent. Just say, what are you working on? Have you got a house out there that you're thinking about listing? Let me do a valuation on it, and then I'll take a couple of minutes of your time and do comparisons and see. Okay? That's an easy and quick way to learn, and agents that do that won't have a problem with giving you an address, let you do that, and then have fun justifying their price when you come up, $15,000 less. you know, that kind of thing. So, and it's a great learning experience, it won't take much.
I tell people a lot that I can tell them the market value of the home, but that I can't tell them how they feel in the home.
Correct.
Because
Yeah.
I always tell my buyers that I live in a house built in 1910. So if you really want my opinion on a house in the middle of a farm field that was built last year, I don't like it.
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. Yeah.
Never, ever.
I was there for 25 years.
Yeah.
Lived in Union Park in a house built in 1900s, you know. So new construction, didn't carry at all. Now I live in new construction. This is great. You can put up a light fixture and not have to have a screw that long. It's awesome, you know. So it makes a big difference. So thank you guys. If there's any questions, you get into a bind or something and you're wondering about something, feel free to pick up the phone and call, and we can run back and forth and see if there's any way I can help. But hopefully something that you heard or saw today makes some difference in what you're doing out there.
Not to delay too long, I did have a question I forgot.
Yes.
Do you ever, or do you find that it's happening a lot? I feel like it is kind of like you said, throw a dart when it's a low inventory market like this.
Well,
You know, have the conversation with your seller. All right, so this is where I think it should sell. This is where the market tells me it should sell.
Yeah.
I think you have
But it's batshit crazy right now, so let's price it $10,000 higher,
Yes.
knowing that in 2 weeks we'll reduce it.
There's two things you have to factor in. One is the, you know, supply and demand, you know, so that will gain you some valuation. And an appraiser in an upswing market sometimes will give, because they're working with old comparables, you know, they'll give you, you know, a 3-5% bump just because of market upswing. They, you know, good ones will do that. They understand that the market's going up and they're working on old data, you know.
Beaverdale specifically, I think.
Beaverdale has
Crazy
jumped.
numbers.
Oh, it's nuts,
I
yeah.
mean,
That's
where-
what
I don't know
Right.
how they're gonna.
And yeah, with an explanation, certainly. The other thing, and I didn't do this forever, I didn't do this, and I had to over the last few years, is that I factor in closing costs in my listings. Now, everybody know that, and so I'll get inundated when you guys write an offer on a listing. But I factor in closing, I factor in closing costs most time. Maybe it's $1,500 or $2,500.
You get like an estimate of proceeds, or you do it on.
No, on valuation.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll like, if it's worth 175, you know, I might do 177.5 or 180. Just because I know that one of you guys is gonna come in and write an offer and it's gonna be $2,000 low with $2,500 in closing costs
Wow.
and the refrigerator, washer, and dryer.
Mine still will be,
Huh?
mine will still be low
Yours,
when I write on yours.
oh, I know. And you're like Johnny Lee, every time I get a house, he's like, oh my God, that's so overpriced, I can't believe you did that. Yeah, always, everything's overpriced for Johnny.
He probably tells people, hey, let's mess with it.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a couple of things you can do though, like looking at the age of a roof. So if you walk through a home and the roof's 30 years old and it's the original roof for a house, that seller already knows the reason why they're moving. It's because I don't want to, do I move now or do I replace the roof, then I'm out $10,000 and then move? Well, if I'm moving, I'm not going to fix someone's problem. Sellers know this. Sellers also know the mechanicals that are original in their basement. The mechanicals, the furnace, air conditioner, water heater, it's 30 years old as well. But it works as its intended use, but if I stay here, I may have to replace it soon. So the sellers know that. You walking in and explaining in your valuation that these items would be need to take into consideration, because the buyer is just as sharp as you are, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, believe it or not. I wouldn't say it like that. But, you know, they're educated as well, okay? And so you're not telling folks what they don't already know, because the reason why they're moving is because they don't want to replace those old windows, they don't want to replace that roof, they don't want to replace that mechanical, okay? So when you're walking through, just be conscious of that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like I said, you know, amenities and condition is huge factors.
There's three things I got from Lance today, thank you, is that livability plays a big factor in value. Valuations plays a big factor in value. And sellability.
Saleability.
What is that again?
That's what Jason was talking about, is how people feel in a house.
How do they feel?
How does the house make them feel?
That's the-
And if you listen to your people,
Does it smell like cats? That's
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, that doesn't make you feel so good.
So I put value on everything because you know where my mind's at.
So, yeah, the saleability is a huge thing, and you'll find people, if you really listen to people, and I tell them when we go out to look at a house, I tell people, please talk. If it's amongst yourselves or back and forth with me, talk, because I need to listen to what you are thinking. That helps me.
Absolutely.
So talk. And you'll find people are two different kinds. They either are saying, oh, look at this, isn't that amazing? Oh, look at this, did you see that? Okay, those are visual. And then you have the other people, like Carrie. Carrie's the other kind. When they go into a room, it's how it feels. Man, this feels great in here. That's you, isn't it? Yeah. So you have two different kinds of buyers, and they will express themselves, and if you listen, you'll know, and then you can talk to them in their language.
Wow.
Instead of saying, hey, what do you think? What do you see? How's this look? You can say, hey, how's this feel? Because if they say that to you, you'll be like, yeah, it feels like a cat lives here. So.
I had one other tip I got from somebody probably 2 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and it blew my mind when they said it, but it's such a simple thing. Everybody likes to list at 99,900 versus 100.
Yeah.
I never do that anymore.
Never.
Because they told me, well, yeah, if you do that, if you do 99,900, somebody looking for a house from 100 to 125 will never see it.
Yeah.
That blew my mind.
I've always done it.
Yeah.
And I haven't done it since. And
Yeah.
I just double checked it on
do.
Zillow, and it does that.
I run it at
$25,000 increments.
Yeah, and it just depends, And I used to tell people, there used to be the old thing, it's like, okay, you list at 150 or 175, or you list at 172.5, or you come down to 170, or you go to 167.5, because anything in between those numbers doesn't mean anything. So you have somebody say, well, we don't want to list it at 168. Right, well, let's put it on the market at 170 then, because it doesn't make any difference whatsoever. Nobody goes, okay, 168, that's the absolute top that we're gonna look at. Okay, everybody throws out a couple thousand for negotiation, Even if they were told 168 was their top price, they're gonna look at 170.
Well, it's amazing how much of that is still out there. 149.9.
I see it all the
Somebody looking
time.
for a house at 150 and up, they'll never.
Oh, we went through the whole thing for where it was like, okay, we don't want it, 149.9. We want it 149.999. And then we did the thing. It's like, okay, 149.743. To be different.
Two builders did that,
Yeah. I mean, all that stuff. So those things are out there. And part of that stems from, just as a history lesson, part of that stems is that in the book, the old book, like sitting out there, you came up in a different spot if you were under. So you wanted to be the first one, okay? So you wanted to hit those valuations because you go through the book and see them, because that's how we looked everything up back in the day, was through the book. So part of that stems from that. Part of that is that marketing thing that, it's like gas. How do you relate to gas? I bought mine for $1.99. There's 9/10 on all of those,
I relate to gas with when my tank's empty, I fill it up.
Yeah.
Whatever.
There you go.
I'm gonna buy it anyway.
There you go. Here's a little gas thing. You can see if this works for you. Watch gas prices, and then at the same time watch interest rates. There's a correlation. All right, guys. Thank you so very much. I appreciate it.
I'm curious on that correlation.